My fiancé left me for a rich woman, laughing that I'd never be enough. He thought he had won, until he discovered I was secretly her boss. His confidence shattered, but that wasn't the worst part. Because, when his darkest secrets came to light, he realized too late that he had destroyed his own life. Before we continue, I would like to ask you to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave a comment about where you are watching. Let's go back to where it all began. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city, I, Alexia, sat quietly in our shared living room, a book forgotten in my lap. It had been weeks since Julian and I had spent a quiet evening together. His presence in our home had dwindled to brief appearances between increasingly frequent business meetings. The scent of his cologne lingered less and less each day, replaced by a palpable distance that no candlelit dinner could bridge. "Working late again tonight?" I asked over the phone, trying to keep my voice light, hiding the tremor of concern that had started to gnaw at my heart. "Yeah, something big is coming up. You know how it is," Julian replied, his voice distracted. The warmth it once held for me seemingly cooled. I noticed it then, the subtle shift. The missed dinners turned into missed weekends, and his excuses piled up like the unread magazines on our coffee table. Julian, who once couldn't wait to come home and share every mundane detail of his day, now shared nothing but cold pecks on the cheek and hurried goodbyes. One evening, as I waited for him to return from another unexpected business engagement, I stumbled upon an invitation to a gala, carelessly left on the counter. The card, embossed with golden letters, bore the name Estella Walton. Her name wasn't unfamiliar. She was known in our circles, a woman of grace and gravity, whose family's wealth was only eclipsed by their influence. Curiosity turned to concern as I recalled the recent changes in Julian. His new suits, the secretive phone calls he thought I didn't hear, his sudden interest in events and circles where Estella was often the star. It was not just the gala invitation, but the accumulation of small, insidious signs that led to an uncomfortable realization. That night, as Julian prepared for yet another event, I watched him with a careful eye. "Who will be there tonight?" I ventured, hoping for a glimpse into his now closed-off world. "Oh, the usual crowd, and the Waltons, of course. Estella has been a great help with some connections," he replied nonchalantly, adjusting his tie in the mirror. The way his face lit up when he mentioned her name was a blow I hadn't been prepared for. It was a look I recognized, one that used to be reserved for me. This was no mere professional admiration. It was something deeper, a distraction that pulled him further from our shared life. As he left, his scent, a mix of cologne and anticipation, filled the space between us, a space that had grown too wide to bridge with mere words or wishes. I sat back, the pieces of a painful puzzle falling into place, each one edged with the growing realization of his disinterest and the magnetic pull of Estella Walton's world. That night, the apartment felt emptier than ever. I wandered from room to room, tracing the ghost of our shared dreams in the silent echoes of the walls. The man I loved was slipping away, lured by the allure of a world I feared I could no longer compete with. In the quiet solitude of our bedroom, I faced the bitter truth. Julian was distant, not just physically, but emotionally. His thoughts occupied with a woman who had the power to offer him more than just love. A woman like Estella Walton. The weight of suspicion became unbearable as the days grew colder and Julian's excuses thinner. I, Alexia, decided it was time to seek the truth myself. Armed with nothing but a determined heart and a keen eye, I began to track Julian's movements with a meticulousness that would have impressed a detective. It started with small observations. Julian, who had always been punctual, now returned home at irregular hours under the guise of urgent meetings. His phone, once left carelessly on the kitchen counter, was now always glued to his side, messages lighting up the screen like fireflies, in the dark. His careful guarding of his digital life was the first red flag that spurred me into action. One Tuesday evening, claimed to be reserved for a critical business strategy session, I decided to follow him. Donning a nondescript hoodie and sunglasses, I felt like a character out of a spy thriller as I tailed the taxi that carried Julian away from the apartment we shared. The destination wasn't a corporate office, but a cozy, dimly lit restaurant known for its discretion and exclusivity. From a parked car across the street, I watched as Julian and Estella Walton entered the restaurant, laughing together in a way that was intimately familiar yet entirely foreign. The ease between them was palpable, and it stung sharply. I snapped a few photos with my phone, the digital click sounding like the ticking of a heartbreak clock. But I needed more than just photographs. I needed incontrovertible evidence. Over the next few weeks, I employed every tool at my disposal. I learned to check Uber receipts emailed to his account, which we shared for budgeting purposes, only to find trips to Estella's upscale apartment when he was supposed to be at business dinners. I combed through credit card statements for clues, finding charges for gifts I never received and dinners I never attended. The most damning evidence came when I installed a tracking app on his phone. It was a desperate measure, one that conflicted with my moral compass, but my need for the truth justified the invasion. The app confirmed my worst fears. Julian's visits to Estella were frequent, and his work trips coincided with her business itinerary. With the data collected, I meticulously organized it, creating a timeline that painted a clear picture of deceit. Julian was not just involved with Estella. He was entwined in a relationship that spanned both personal indulgence and professional advantage. His supposed overtime at work often aligned with Estella's company events, revealing a partnership that went beyond the professional into the realms of personal betrayal. Confronting the reality of Julian's deception was devastating. Every piece of evidence felt like a personal affront, a direct contradiction of the life and future we had planned together. Yet, armed with the truth, I was no longer a victim of circumstance, but a woman empowered by knowledge, ready to face the next chapter. However challenging it might be, the confrontation was inevitable. As I sat across from Julian in the very living room where we had shared countless evenings filled with dreams and laughter, the atmosphere was now charged with a palpable tension. My hands were cold, but my resolve was fiery hot, fortified by the damning evidence of his deceit. "Julian," I began, my voice calm but firm, "I know about Estella Walton. Not just who she is, but what she is to you." The words hung heavily between us, a gauntlet thrown that shattered the illusion of our perfect engagement. He hesitated, his facade crumbling under the weight of exposed secrets. "Alexia, he started, but the truth was stronger than his, stammering. "Yes, it's true," he finally admitted, his voice a mix of resignation and defiance. "Estella understands me, my ambitions. She supports what I want to achieve in a way I felt you never did." The betrayal, now voiced, sliced through the remnants of my trust like a sharp knife through silk. "And that justifies your actions?" I countered, the hurt evident in my eyes but my stance unwavering. "Building a life with her while lying to me?" Julian shifted uncomfortably, his usual confidence replaced by a dawning realization of the consequences. "I thought I could manage both worlds, but I can't. I'm sorry you had to find out this way." "Sorry doesn't change what you did, Julian. It doesn't erase the lies or the pain," I replied, the clarity of my decision ringing through each word. "You need to move out." He laughed, a hollow sound devoid of genuine amusement. "Move out? And where do you think you'll go? You can't afford this place on your own, Alexia." His assumption was like a cold splash of water, waking me from any lingering stupor of denial. It wasn't just the betrayal of the heart, but an underestimation of my capabilities, my independence. He still saw me as the younger woman he could dazzle and dominate, not the self-made professional I was, independent and capable. "Julian, You underestimate me, I said, standing my ground with newfound strength. I have been more than just your fiancé. I have a career, a life, and ambitions of my own, which I can and will pursue without you. The realization dawned on him then, his expression shifting from condescension to confusion, and then to fear. He understood that his manipulations would no longer work, that his safety net of lies had been pulled away. As he packed his things, the finality of our shared life closing with each fold of his clothes, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. The man I loved was a stranger now. His true face shone not in the moments of affection, but in the shadows of his deceit. Once he had left, the apartment felt simultaneously emptier and more expansive. The air seemed clearer, as if his departure had lifted a veil of pollutants from my surroundings. I was alone, truly alone for the first time in years. But I was unbroken. The path ahead was uncertain, paved with challenges of redefining my life and my identity apart from him, but I was ready to walk it head-on, powered by the truth and my own strength. As the dust settled in the aftermath of Julian's departure, my focus shifted from the personal fallout to a broader battlefield. I, Alexia, wasn't just any jilted partner. I was a high-ranking executive at Meridian Enterprises, a position I had kept shielded from Julian's view, hidden beneath the veneer of the supportive fiancé. But now, it was time to wield my influence, not for revenge, but for rightful retribution and control over my destiny. The board meeting was set for Monday morning, an assembly of the company's most influential figures, and today, it would also include Estella Walton. Her company, Walton Media, had been on our radar for potential acquisition, a detail Julian was unaware of, his duplicity blinding him to the true extent of my professional capabilities. I prepared meticulously, not just in terms of strategy, but in crafting the narrative I wanted to unfold. My presentation was more than just numbers and projections. It was a chessboard, and I was ready to make a calculated play that would not only secure my company's future, but also address the personal breach of trust. As I entered the boardroom, the air was thick with anticipation, and the subtle click of my heels on the polished wood floor resonated like a metronome, counting down the moments to a confrontation that was both professional and deeply personal. I greeted each board member with a nod, my demeanor composed, my portfolio of documents betraying nothing of my internal turmoil. Estella was already there, her poise as impeccable as her reputation. She smiled, a glint of triumph in her eyes, mistaking my calm for defeat. But as the meeting commenced, her smile faltered, replaced by a dawning realization as I began to unveil not just the financials, but the strategic vision behind the potential acquisition of Walton Media. Esteemed colleagues, I began, my voice steady, projecting not just across the room but reaching into the corners where backroom deals and whispered secrets lay hidden. Today, we discuss not just a merger, but a pivotal decision that will determine our trajectory in the industry. As I clicked the remote, the first slide illuminated behind me, outlining the strengths of Walton Media. Estella's face registered approval, mistaking this as an endorsement. But as the slides progressed, so did my narrative. I presented data-driven assessments, market analyses, and growth projections, subtly weaving in the vulnerabilities of Walton Media, notably in areas where Estella had direct oversight. The room grew tense, the board members leaning forward as the implications became clear. Estella's earlier strategies, once lauded, were now under scrutiny, displayed as missteps that jeopardized rather than capitalized on market trends. Let us consider, I continued, my gaze meeting Estella's, the leadership under which these decisions were made. Leadership that might benefit from realignment. Estella attempted to interject, to defend her record, but each point she made was anticipated, countered by my prepared remarks. It was a dance of words and wills, and I led each step. As the meeting drew to a close, the board was thoughtful. their earlier reservations replaced by nods of agreement as I concluded. In moving forward with this acquisition, we must not only integrate but innovate, ensuring leadership that aligns with our strategic goals and values. The impact was immediate and profound. The board voted overwhelmingly in favor of the acquisition, but with a critical amendment, restructuring of Walton Media's leadership to ensure alignment with Meridian's vision. As everyone filed out, Estella's earlier confidence was shattered, replaced by a forced composure. She approached me, her eyes searching for an ally in her defeat. "Alexia, perhaps we can discuss how I might fit into the new structure." I met her gaze, my reply measured but firm. "Estella, every role in this new phase will be earned by merit and trust, values we hold dear at Meridian." Walking out of the boardroom, I felt the weight of the morning's dual burdens lift slightly. While the personal wounds were still fresh, the professional victory was a salve. In the complex interplay of business and personal life, I had affirmed my resolve not to be underestimated or overshadowed. The ink was barely dry on the documents that ratified the acquisition of Walton Media by Meridian Enterprises, yet the wheels of change were already turning at a relentless pace. As Chief Strategy Officer, I, Alexia, was at the helm of this transformative move, tasked with integrating two disparate entities into a singular, more formidable conglomerate. The decision was strategic, calculated to position Meridian at the vanguard of the industry, but it was also personal, a redemption of sorts, a chance to right the wrongs and reclaim control. The days following the board meeting were a blur of activity. My office became command central, buzzing with the constant comings and goings of legal advisors, financial analysts, and senior managers, all orchestrated by my directive. The task was Herculean, melding cultures, aligning business practices, reassessing roles and responsibilities, especially that of Estella Walton. Estella, once the poised queen of her domain, now found her role significantly diminished. As part of the acquisition agreement, it was my duty to evaluate the leadership structure of Walton Media and make the necessary adjustments to ensure alignment with Meridian's strategic objectives. The process was clinical, devoid of personal vendetta, driven solely by the imperatives of business efficacy and growth potential. I convened a series of meetings with Estella, each session a delicate dance of diplomacy and decisiveness. "Estella, your understanding of the media landscape is invaluable to us," I began during one such meeting, ensuring to acknowledge her expertise while subtly steering the conversation towards the future. However, the integration process requires a reshuffling of roles to harness synergies and eliminate redundancies. Estella's initial resistance was palpable. Her identity, so intertwined with her former company, seemed to bristle at the notion of being absorbed into another entity, her autonomy threatened. Yet as we delved deeper into the specifics of the merger, discussing departments, projects, and personnel, her defiance gradually gave way to a reluctant acceptance. The reality of her altered circumstances became inescapable. The most contentious discussions revolved around the digital strategy division, a sector where Walton Media had underperformed under Estella's leadership. "We're looking at a more data-driven approach, leveraging analytics to drive content creation and distribution," I explained, laying out the plans for revamping the division, plans that required a leader with a different skill set. As tough as it was, I recommended transitioning Estella to a consultative role, away from day-to-day operations but still involved in strategic projects where her industry connections could be beneficial. This move, diplomatically framed as leveraging her strengths while supporting her development in areas aligned with Meridian's goals, was crucial in maintaining harmony and momentum during the merger. Simultaneously, my team and I worked tirelessly, on the ground, meeting with Walton Media employees, addressing their concerns and expectations, reassuring them of their place in this new chapter. Transparency and communication were our watchwords, the tools with which we sought to knit together a tapestry of diverse talents and histories into a cohesive whole. As the integration gained pace, the landscape of the company began to shift. Departments were merged, new roles created, and some phased out. The changes were not just structural but cultural, instilling a new ethos of innovation, accountability, and collaboration. Reflecting on the weeks of relentless negotiations, strategic planning, and meticulous execution, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The takeover was not just a corporate restructuring, but a personal journey of asserting my competence and authority in a world that often underestimated women like Estella and me. As I looked out of my office window, the cityscape below mirrored my thoughts, constantly evolving, ambitious, and unyielding. Meridian Enterprises, with Walton Media now a part of its portfolio, was poised to redefine the industry, and I, Alexia, was at the forefront of this revolution. The boardroom was set for yet another pivotal meeting at Meridian Enterprises, but this time, the focus was razor-sharp. A thorough review of the digital strategy under the erstwhile leadership of Estella Walton at Walton Media. As the Chief Strategy Officer, it was my duty, Alexia, to lead this review, armed with data and analytics that would illuminate the path forward and expose the shortcomings that had crept into the company under Estella's watch. With the room filled with key stakeholders and decision-makers, I initiated the presentation, the air thick with anticipation and the subtle hum of high stakes. Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to integrate Walton Media's operations into our Meridian framework, it is imperative that we critically assess where we stand and where we need to direct our focus. I began, my voice steady, projecting not just authority, but also a commitment to transparency and rigor. The screen behind me lit up with graphs, charts, and data points, each a testament to the meticulous preparation that had gone into this assessment. Let's start with our digital content strategy, which is crucial in today's media landscape, I continued, clicking to a slide that displayed a series of metrics illustrating the performance of Walton Media's digital channels over the past year. The data was revealing, showing a clear trend of underperformance in key areas such as user engagement, content virality, and ad revenue generation. As you can see, there has been a consistent decline in user engagement rates across all platforms, which is concerning given the increasing consumption of digital content globally, I highlighted, pointing to a graph that showed a significant drop compared to industry averages. I then moved to the next slide, which detailed the SEO, search engine optimization, strategies employed, and their effectiveness. Here we see a mismatch between content output and search engine rankings. Despite a high volume of content production, our visibility on search engines has been subpar, indicating a lack of alignment with best SEO practices, I explained, the evidence painting a picture of missed opportunities and inefficient practices. As the presentation progressed, it became increasingly clear that while Estella had excelled in traditional media strategies, her approach to digital had been lacking. The culmination of the presentation was a comparison slide, juxtaposing Walton Media's strategies with those of leading competitors. This slide illustrates the gap between our current strategies and those employed by our competitors, who are capitalizing on advanced analytics and AI-driven content personalization to great effect, I stated. The implication clear and the solution imminent. The room was silent as the implications of the data sank in. It was a difficult moment, particularly for Estella, who sat across the table, her expression one of dawning realization and subdued defiance. The presentation was not just a critique, but a roadmap for Meridian's strategy moving forward, necessitating tough decisions and bold leadership shifts. As questions and discussions ensued, the consensus was unmistakable. There was a unanimous agreement on the need for a strategic overhaul of the digital division. And while the dialogue was professional and focused on the future, the underlying message was unmissable. There would need to be a change in leadership to steer this new direction effectively. The meeting concluded with a round of appreciative nods as I laid out the next steps, including the formation of a task force to implement the new digital strategy and a search for a new head of digital operations, a role that would require a fusion of creative and analytical prowess. Stepping out of the boardroom, the weight of the day's proceedings was palpable, yet there was a sense of accomplishment in having navigated through one of the toughest challenges of corporate leadership. For Estella, the meeting marked a professional downfall, a stark pivot from her previous stature. But for Meridian, it was a necessary recalibration, setting the stage for innovation and growth in the digital age. In the wake of the strategic overhaul at Meridian Enterprises, the ripple effects extended far beyond the immediate sphere of digital strategy. As the integration process intensified, every department and employee, past and present, came under scrutiny. Julian, whose professional life had intertwined deviously with his personal betrayals, was about to face the repercussions of his actions in a domain where I had no influence: his own unethical business conduct. It began with an anonymous tip received by the compliance department, an email laced with allegations of irregular client acquisition practices that Julian allegedly orchestrated. Intrigued and concerned, the compliance officer launched a discreet investigation, tracing the web of deals and agreements Julian had brokered over the past year. The investigation swiftly gathered momentum as emails were subpoenaed, meeting notes reviewed, and financial transactions audited. The findings painted a damning picture. Julian had been engaging in a series of under-the-table dealings, offering lucrative kickbacks to clients in exchange for their business, a clear violation of corporate ethics and legal standards. As the evidence stacked up, a special committee was convened to address the findings. The room was stark, the atmosphere tense as Julian was called in to confront the accusations. I was not present, but the reports described Julian's demeanor as defiant initially, morphing into desperation as the weight of the documented evidence became undeniable. "Julian, these actions, if proven true, not only breach our ethical code, but could potentially expose us to severe legal repercussions," the head of the committee explained, laying out the implications of his actions with surgical precision. Julian, once a master of persuasion in the boardroom, found his skills inadequate in the face of cold, hard facts. The committee's decision was swift and unanimous. Julian was to be terminated effective immediately, with potential legal actions to follow depending on the outcome of further investigations. The news of his firing spread through the corporate grapevine with alarming speed, serving as a stark warning to others who might consider similar tactics. In the days that followed, the impact of Julian's downfall reverberated throughout the industry. Clients he had once boasted about acquiring started distancing themselves, issuing statements about reviewing their contracts and commitments. Julian's professional reputation, once sterling, was now irreparably tarnished. For me, the news of Julian's firing was bittersweet. While there was a certain vindication in seeing his unethical practices addressed, there was no joy in witnessing the complete collapse of someone I had once loved and trusted. It was a solemn reminder of how closely intertwined our personal and professional lives had become, and the dire consequences of blurring these lines with deceit and manipulation. As Meridian moved forward, the culture shift was palpable. Integrity, transparency, and accountability became the cornerstones of every department. The fallout from Julian's actions led to a strengthening of compliance protocols and a company-wide reassessment of values. It was a painful but necessary growth, born out of the chaos he had left behind. Reflecting on the entire ordeal, I realized the depth of the professional world's complexities and the vigilance required to navigate them. The downfall of Julian was not just about the failure of one man, but a catalyst for broader institutional reflection and reform. It was a hard-won lesson in governance and ethics, one that would shape the future of Meridian Enterprises for years to come. As Meridian Enterprises began to stabilize from the internal upheavals, an unexpected development shifted the narrative back to the legal arena. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, had launched a formal investigation into allegations of insider trading that appeared to involve Julian and, more critically, Richard Walton, Estella's father, and a major player in the financial markets. The genesis of the SEC's interest was traced back to suspicious trading patterns that surfaced during a routine audit of transactions around the time of key merger announcements involving Walton Media. These patterns indicated that certain individuals had executed trades that seemed to anticipate market moves based on non-public information, a classic hallmark of insider trading. Armed with subpoenas, the SEC investigators began their meticulous work, pulling threads from what appeared to be a complex tapestry of illicit financial gains. Their focus was sharply on Julian and Richard Walton, whose communications and financial records suggested a deeper involvement than previously suspected. I, Alexia, watched from a distance as the company I worked so hard to protect was dragged into the headlines once again, this time for reasons that struck at the very integrity of our operations. The investigation revealed that Julian, leveraging his intimate knowledge from his engagement with Estella and her father, had passed along sensitive information that Richard Walton used to inform his trading decisions. The meetings between the SEC officials and our legal team were tense, marked by a flurry of document exchanges and interviews. As Chief Strategy Officer, I was briefed regularly, each update adding to the gravity of the situation. It was during one of these briefings that the full extent of the potential fallout began to crystallize. Based on the evidence we've gathered, it appears Mr. Walton and your former employee, Julian, engaged in a series of transactions that clearly benefited from insider knowledge, the lead SEC investigator explained in one of the meetings, laying out a timeline that was damning in its clarity. The implications were severe. Not only did this threaten Richard Walton's career and legacy, but it also put Walton Media, now under the Meridian umbrella, at risk of severe reputational damage. The potential penalties and sanctions loomed, large, threatening to undo much of the progress we had made in integrating the company's operations. As the investigation progressed, Richard Walton was called in for questioning. His formidable presence diminished as he walked through the doors of the SEC headquarters. The media frenzy was relentless, cameras flashing and reporters jostling for comments as he maintained a stoic silence. Inside the interrogation room, the exchanges were clinical but charged with an undercurrent of urgency. Mr. Walton, you explained this transaction on March 3rd, which preceded the public announcement of the merger by 2 days? One of the investigators pressed, pointing to a specific line item that was particularly incriminating. Richard's defenses were carefully constructed, but as more evidence was laid before him, his narrative began to unravel. The connection to Julian, his daughter's involvement, and the timing of the trades painted a picture of calculated insider trading that was hard to dismiss. As the investigation drew to a close, the SEC prepared to make its findings public. The repercussions were expected to be significant, not just for Julian and Richard Walton, but for the entire corporate structure of Meridian Enterprises. For me, it was a painful reminder of how deeply the personal misjudgments of a few could impact the lives and livelihoods of many. The day the SEC report was released, it confirmed the worst fears. Julian and Richard Walton had manipulated the IDD market to their advantage, exploiting their positions and relationships. The news sent shockwaves through the financial community, leading to calls for stricter regulations and transparency in corporate dealings. Reflecting on the tumultuous events, I realized the importance of vigilance and integrity in leadership. The journey through corporate upheavals, personal betrayals, and now legal battles had been arduous, but it also underscored the resilience needed to navigate such challenges. The path ahead for Meridian Enterprises was uncertain, but it was clear that rebuilding trust and ensuring compliance would be paramount. The fallout from the SEC investigation had left deep scars across Meridian Enterprises and its newly acquired division, Walton Media. Amid the tumult, an unexpected development unfolded, altering the professional and personal trajectories of both Estella Walton and me, Alexia, the architect behind much of the recent corporate restructuring. Estella's approach came on a crisp, clear morning, the kind that heralded new beginnings. The once formidable media mogul appeared at my office door, her presence markedly humbled by the recent events that had not only dented her professional armor, but had also dismantled her father's empire. "Alexia, may I have a moment?" Estella asked, her voice devoid of its usual commanding tone. There was a vulnerability in her eyes that I had never seen before, a clear signal that the walls she had built around her were no longer as impregnable as she had once believed. "Of course, Estella," I replied, gesturing towards the chair across my desk. As she sat, I noticed the weight of the past weeks had altered her composure, lending her an air of introspection. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Estella began, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. About everything that's happened. The merger, the investigation, and my role in all of it. I've made mistakes, Alexia, serious ones, and I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here because I believe you can guide me on a better path. Her admission took me aback. Estella Walton seeking guidance was something I had never anticipated. Yet there it was, an opportunity to influence not just the direction of our company, but also the personal growth of someone who had been a formidable adversary. I appreciate your honesty, Estella, I responded after a pause. And I'm willing to help. But I need to know that your intentions align with our company's values: integrity, accountability, and growth. Not just externally, but internally. As well, Estella nodded earnestly. I understand, and I'm ready to learn truly. Thus began a series of mentorship sessions between us, where I shared insights not only about strategic business management, but also about ethical leadership. Estella was a quick study, absorbing the lessons with a fervor that suggested her commitment to change was genuine. As we delved into the intricacies of digital transformation, corporate governance, and community engagement, I saw a transformation in Estella, a dawning of awareness that business success was as much about how you play the game as it was about the score. Simultaneously, as I guided Estella through the complexities of running a business that was both profitable and principled, I found myself reflecting on my own journey. The quest for retribution that had initially driven my actions was slowly giving way to a broader vision of leadership, one that was less about settling scores and more about forging paths. This role reversal was not just transformative for Estella, it was revelatory for me. The satisfaction I derived from mentoring her, from steering the company through one of its darkest periods to a place of ethical prosperity, was unexpectedly fulfilling. It was a stark realization that professional success could indeed be the best form of revenge, not the vindictive kind, but the kind that builds, nurtures, and leads by example. As Estella and I walked together through the corridors of Meridian Enterprises one afternoon, discussing plans for a new community outreach program, it was clear that our roles had indeed reversed. She was no longer just the heir to a media empire, nor was I solely the strategist behind a corporate takeover. We were collaborators, working towards a shared goal of not just rebuilding a company, but also redefining its purpose. In the aftermath of the SEC investigation and the ensuing shakeups within Meridian Enterprises, a significant development was poised to reshape the professional landscape for Estella Walton. Through her proactive cooperation with the investigators, Estella had demonstrated a commitment to transparency and rectitude that had not gone unnoticed by the senior leadership of Meridian Enterprises. As the dust began to settle and the company looked forward to a period of stabilization and growth, the board recognized the need for leadership that could steer Walton Media, now a subsidiary of Meridian, through its next phase. It was during one of the high-level strategic meetings that the proposal was first floated, a proposal that would not only test Estella's resolve, but also offer her a chance to redeem her tarnished legacy. Given Estella's recent efforts and her intimate understanding of Walton Media's operations, I believe she might be the right candidate to lead the subsidiary as its CEO on a temporary basis, I suggested to the board, presenting the idea with a balance of caution and conviction. The room filled with murmurs of consideration. The suggestion was unconventional, yet it resonated with a board keen on demonstrating a commitment to reform and second chances. Estella, who had been working diligently under my mentorship, was invited to present her vision for Walton Media in what would be one of the most crucial presentations of her career. She stood before the board, composed, yet visibly moved by the opportunity to reclaim a leadership role under dramatically different circumstances. "Ladies and gentlemen," Estella began, her voice clear and confident, "I stand before you today, a changed leader. The past months have been some of the most challenging of my professional life, but they have also been a period of profound learning and reflection. I am here to not only apologize for my past mistakes, but to demonstrate how I intend to lead Walton Media forward." She outlined a comprehensive strategy that included overhauling the digital strategy framework, enhancing corporate governance, and introducing a robust compliance system to prevent the kind of ethical breaches that had plagued the company's past. Her presentation was not just a display of professional acumen, but a narrative of personal growth and commitment. The board deliberated long after Estella had finished speaking. The decision to appoint her as the temporary CEO of Walton Media was fraught with risk, but it also presented a compelling narrative of redemption and resilience that could inspire the company at large. When the decision was finally announced, it was met with a mixture of surprise and admiration across the corporate spectrum. Estella's appointment was seen not just as a personal victory, but as a testament to Meridian's values of accountability and redemption. Under her leadership, Walton Media began to experience a turnaround. Estella implemented the strategies she had outlined, driving innovation and transparency. Her open communication and reformed leadership style gradually won over even her staunchest critics. For me, watching Estella rise to the occasion was a reaffirmation of the beliefs that had guided my own leadership journey. Belief in the power of second chances, in the potential for personal and professional transformation, and in the strength of strategic alliances. As Estella thrived in her new role, it became clear that her journey from a disgraced executive to a visionary leader was not just about repairing a broken career, but about setting a precedent in corporate governance, a narrative of how strategic alliances, grounded in trust and reform, could pave the way for redemption and innovation in the business world. The corridors of Meridian Enterprises buzzed with a palpable sense of anticipation and accomplishment as the final stages of Walton Media's integration neared completion. As the Chief Strategy Officer, my journey had been fraught with challenges, from navigating through personal betrayals to steering massive corporate mergers. Yet, standing on the brink of this ultimate victory, I felt a profound sense of achievement that transcended the typical metrics of success. The integration process had been meticulous and exhaustive, involving countless hours of negotiations, planning, and execution. Every department within Walton Media had been evaluated, restructured, or enhanced to align with Meridian's strategic vision and operational ethos. The task was Herculean, involving not just logistical realignments, but also cultural transformations, ensuring that the staff from Walton Media felt not just incorporated, but welcomed into the Meridian family. As I prepared for the final board meeting to announce the completion of the integration, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. It was a narrative punctuated by strategic decisions that were as much about people as they were about profits. My approach had always been to lead with integrity and vision, qualities that had been severely tested but ultimately vindicated through this process. The boardroom filled slowly with executives and stakeholders, each person's presence a testament to the collective effort that had driven this merger. I stood at the head of the table, the weight of the moment not lost on me. As the meeting commenced, I began with a review of our journey, highlighting the strategic milestones, the challenges overcome, and the synergies achieved. Today marks a significant milestone not just for Meridian Enterprises, but for all those associated with Walton Media, I began, my voice steady, imbued with the gravity of the occasion. What we have accomplished together is a testament to what is possible when we unite vision with diligence and ambition with integrity. I presented a detailed report that encapsulated the integration strategy, from financial alignments and technology upgrades to brand consolidation and market expansion. The report also highlighted key success stories from various departments, showcasing how former Walton Media employees had stepped up to take on new roles and responsibilities within the Meridian framework. The climax of the presentation was the unveiling of a new organizational chart that symbolized the seamless integration of Walton Media. The chart was not just a structure of names and positions, it was a blueprint of our future growth strategy, poised to propel us to new heights in the competitive media landscape. As applause filled the room, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. This victory was not born out of vengeance, but from a desire to forge something enduring and ethical from the wreckage of past misdeeds. It was a victory for every employee who had embraced change, for every manager who had navigated through uncertainties, and for leaders like Estella, who had found redemption in the face of adversity. The meeting concluded with forward-looking discussions, setting goals for the next quarter and beyond. As I left the boardroom, I felt the weight of the past months lift, replaced by an invigorating sense of potential. We had not just survived. We had thrived, turning challenges into opportunities and skepticism into belief. This ultimate victory was not just about proving that success could be the best form of revenge. It was about demonstrating that true success comes from building bridges, not walls, from healing wounds, and from setting a course that others aspire to follow. As I walked back to my office, the view from the window mirrored the new horizon that lay before us, a landscape brimming with possibilities, ready to be explored and shaped by the values we held dear.